This is my video on the word subjective, and I really think that subjective is one of the most powerful words that you can learn, and because it unleashes so many thoughts and creative ideas about yourself and the world, so it is well worth learning about. So I'll get straight to putting it in the title, and that's the word subjective in purple. Whoops, not in purple. And here is the definition. And it is quite hard to pin down a definition for the word subjective, but in essence, it means existing in the mind. Now you notice that means that it's about seeing and feeling and thinking, not about what you actually physically are or what the object out there is. It's about the observer rather than the object being observed. And another way of thinking about this is when you think about the word I, because I is a very subjective word. In fact, it's the essence of subjectivity. Because when you say I, you are talking about a subject. You're not talking about an object, say John or David or a lamppost. You're talking about yourself. You're talking about the person doing the seeing, doing the observing. So subjectivity creates a unique perspective. No one else has that perspective. No one else sees the sights that your eyes see. No one else perceives the thoughts and feelings that your consciousness perceives. So subjectivity creates a kind of unique identity for the subject, for you and me. And that is a positive thought in many ways, but some people use the word subjective in a negative way. They might say his opinions were very subjective. Now, that's a quite important point to note down. So if I draw a line down here, I'll say used as criticism, subjective means being influenced by your mood or attitude or even prejudice. So if someone reads the book that you've written and they just say, oh, that's terrible, and start screaming, that's probably because you might say they're being very subjective. They're being influenced by their mood, by their attitude, or by their prejudice. It's not about a clear analytical assessment of what you've done. It's about them being subjective. So when you hear the word subjective being used as a criticism, as a negative word, that's often what it means. It means that person or that critic is letting their own mood or feelings excessively influence what they're saying about a certain object. Now, I think at this point it would help to have a look at where the word came from. So, subjective came from Latin, etymology. Etymology being where the word came from. From Latin subjectus, which, as you might imagine, is where you get the word subject in terms of, the Queen's subject or, mathematical subject. It all comes from the same word. And it literally just means existing in the mind. It's a kind of relationship. When you see that word, and I've done it in other videos, sub means below. So it's that idea of looking down on something, not always in a negative sense, just in that sense of being separate from something, looking at it from a certain perspective. To try and illustrate that, if I copy in this picture, now this is just a fairly typical standard optical illusion where your mind perceives the lines as being crooked, where actually they're straight lines. And I use it just to emphasize how subjectivity is about you being susceptible to seeing things from your own eyes, not seeing things how they objectively are in reality, but seeing them from your own perspective. And it's linked in with something that I've thought about quite a lot, which is that everyone is different in what they see. When you look out into the world through your eyes, for example, in the bottom left hand corner or the bottom right hand corner, you see your nose. You see your mouth. You see below you your own hands. Only you are seeing the world in that from that unique perspective. And that is the essence of subjectivity. You are the subject looking out the world. You're not looking down from space or looking from some mysterious perspective. You're looking from a particular position at a particular time. And some of the consequences of subjective experience affect many different subjects. For example, science. The whole essence of science and subjects like mathematics and physics is to try and see what is objectively out there. They're less interested in concepts which philosophers might be interested in about subjectivity and the soul and consciousness. They're interested in finding out the concrete facts about the world and reality, and that's why they try to reduce subjectivity. So let me write that down here, and it may be a better color than this. Red, yeah, bit more exciting color. So science and mathematics, tries to reduce as much as possible. I mean, it's never fully possible to eliminate subjectivity because essentially we're all human beings, so we all have that inherent subjectivity about us. But science and mathematics tries to reduce subjectivity and tries to be objective. And I'll do a video on objective, but objective just simply is the opposite of subjective. You're not influenced by mood or attitude or the perspective of being I am or me or whoever. It's trying to be objective. It's trying to see the world for what it actually is. And another subject that's influenced by ideas of subjectivity and objectivity is history. So if I draw a line down here, some people have made the observation that all history is subjective. Because if you think about it, every scroll or every text or every engraving made thousands of years ago or even hundreds of years ago was made by humans in specific positions in society or with specific roles in society, and obviously they're going to come to the events of history from their own perspective. They might be biased. Bias is a central word to the idea of subjective. Bias means coming to a particular point of view with a particular attitude, a preconceived attitude, and that is the heart of subjectivity. So all those people writing down what happened, and we now find out what they wrote down, in a sense they were all subjects of their times and circumstances, and so all of history, you could say, is subjective. Now some would disagree. Some would say, there's enough archaeological evidence that we can build a framework of history without relying on subjective accounts. But it is an interesting thought to think that so much of what we take as reality and take as the history of our society and world could be described as subjective. So I hope all of that gives you an idea of the power and scope of this word subjective, and the interesting areas you can delve into when you begin thinking about just what is subjectivity, what is reality, and what is perspective.